I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is a woman named Lori Vallow Daybell. It's a case unlike any I've ever covered in my career. It involves religion, sex, deceit, and a series of murders, but started as a search for a missing child. Here's the story. It is one of the most tragically bizarre cases in the history of court TV. If you wrote it as a screenplay, no one would take it seriously because it would be too far-fetched for anyone to think it was actually real. But it is. Lori Vallow was married, raising 2 children in Arizona when her brother shot her husband Charles. Then she moved to Idaho to continue her affair with a gravedigger and author claiming to be a prophet. His name, Chad Daybell. Then Lori's children disappear only to be found dead months later in the prophet's backyard. Meanwhile, the prophet's wife dies, and 17 days later, Lori marries the prophet and becomes Lori Daybell. Then, when they exhume the body of the prophet's wife, Lori's brother collapses on the toilet and later dies. No one would believe this story, but a jury did, and both Lori and the prophet, Chad Daybell, have been convicted for their roles in the murders of her 2 children and his wife. Now Lori has been charged in Arizona for the murder of her prior husband, Charles Vallow. The shooting of Charles Vallow, that happened in Arizona. Everything else happened in Idaho. But in Arizona, Charles Vallow was shot and killed by Lori's brother. Now, there were people there in the home. It wasn't just the 2 of them that day. So there were witnesses, and the witnesses include Lori Vallow Daybell. She was just Lori Vallow back then because she was married to Charles, even though they were estranged to a certain extent. And her daughter, Tylee, was there as well. So what I want you to do is take a listen to what Lori and Tylee, her teenage daughter, told police about what happened inside the home that morning.
Yeah, and then I was kind of turned around, and we were all right there in that room except for the kids had been outside by that time, and I heard the gunshot. And
so you heard the shot? Did you actually see the shot, or did you just hear it?
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him, and so back around. So I don't know if you went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, so I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground. Okay. And I was freaking out. Yeah. And so I was just freaking out, and it just went into mom mode. I'm like, I've got to go to get JJ to school. I've got to get to the kids.
And so I fell to the ground, and then my uncle kind of like, I saw him take a step back, so my uncle, I think, grabbed him and kind of took him back so he couldn't like do anything.
You saw your stepdad like take a step back?
Take a step back, because he was really close to begin with, and then and so my mom said to go with JJ, and so I ran out the door, and then I kind of just stood there with my little brother. He was in the front seat of the car, and so I just kind of opened the door and just stood there, and like he was trying to get out, and I was like, no, we have to stay. Eventually my mom came out, and then we left from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened inside of the house? Has your mom kind of explained it all to you?
I just kind of asked her, like, because I heard a noise, which I know what it was now, but it sounded like, because I knew that the base of I was in there, it sounded like someone like took it and hit it really hard against the floor. And then we went to Burger King because my little brother wanted breakfast, which was chicken fries for no reason.
The timing of this morning is something to me that hasn't really been made clear yet. At least in my mind, the way everything's been described, and she's talking about going to Burger King and everything else. So I want to really zero in this first question to establish what I think is an important part of the story, an important fact when it comes to the shooting death of Charles Vallow, and it involves Lori, of course. She's the focus of all of this. Where was Lori when Charles was shot? At that moment, When Charles' life is taken by her brother, Alex, where was Lori? Let me bring in my guests, and we've got good ones tonight. Joining us, the news director of EastIdahoNews.com and the man who tracked Chad and Lori down in Hawaii and really started making this a national story. Nate Eaton is with us. Also joining us, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King. All right, guys, thanks so much for being here. Before we get into this discussion, I just want to go through a little bit of the timeline of that morning so we can have some context and you can give me some perspective on what's happening at what point. We have this video from 7:54 a.m. from the drive-thru. It's Lori going to Burger King. That always, okay, someone's been shot and killed, we're going to Burger King. Is this before, during, after all this is happening? So now let's look at a little timeline based upon video and cell phone data from investigators. 7:54, Lori's at that drive-thru. 8:15, Lori stops at Walgreens. 8:30, Lori drops little JJ off at school. And then at 8:36 a.m., there's a 911 call? What? Okay, Nate, I'm going to start with you. You know more than anybody about this story in this case. Where was Lori at the time of the shooting if the 911 calls at 8:36 and she's in the car with the kids?
No, at the time of the shooting, Vinny, she was at the house. And remember, Charles showed up to pick JJ up to take him to school. And Lori had told her, she was worried that there was talk in her family that there was going to be some intervention because they were concerned for her mental health. They were worried that things were not going well. So she had made arrangements with Alex, her brother, to have him spend the night there at the house the night before the shooting. So Alex was there with a loaded gun when Charles shows up to take JJ to school. She says, and all we have, the words that we have are Lori and Tylee. That's it. JJ's not here anymore, Alex isn't here anymore, and Charles is dead. She says that Charles came in the house, picked JJ up, went outside, and according to Lori, she picked up Charles's phone. He realized his phone was inside the house. He came back into the home, went to get his phone. They got into an argument. All according to Lori, Alex came out and shot him in self-defense. So she was right there at the house when her husband was shot.
Okay, Mike. Looking at, and then the 911 calls 8:36. 8:36. She's at Burger King at the drive-thru at 7:54 a.m. after being in a house where her estranged husband is shot by her brother. Does any of this make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense, Vinny. And I guess that's what I think is probably the most telling testimony in this entire thing, and that is that this shooting had to have happened before she leaves. And I think when we see Charles's cell phone data, we're going to be able to really put this into play. And I hope that comes out in the trial. We're going to see what time he shows up to take JJ. We're going to see what time that phone leaves the residence and heads to Burger King, when it departs, and when we know when it shows up at that 8:54 mark or that 7:54 mark. But then there's 30 minutes that pass, the Walgreens stop in between. And what this tells me is that there was staging and there was some planning going on of how are we going to now explain all of this. And, you know, as you talked about the location in which Lori says she was, and she describes that in her testimony, I think it's really important because it starts painting a picture. I've studied those blueprints of that house over and over again. And she makes this motion of going right from left to right as she goes into that kitchen area. So she's entering that dining area, going past that place. If you remember that video where that little Buzz Lightyear toy sitting on the counter to just remind you how horrid this crime scene was and what those children had to endure. And then she's coming into that kitchen area facing with probably Alex right between her and Charles when those shots are fired. She says she only heard it. You know what, Vinny? She walked past a dead body and somehow didn't think I ought to call 911. In fact, I think I'll just go tell the kids we're going to go get a burger and pick up some shoes. It makes absolutely no sense, and I think it's going to be something that is going to really hit her hard in the trial.
Nate, what
do we believe is the time of the shooting? Is that established in any way?
The time of the shooting was pretty much right when she left the house or around that time. So the exact minute, Mike might be able to have that exact minute. But the reason that she went to get the shoes, they're saying, is because she had to get the kids out of the house so quickly they didn't have time to get their shoes. And that was the reason she said she had to stop at the Walgreens. And there's been there's been video of her not only at the Burger King, but at the Walgreens. So why was there a 40-minute or so delay in calling 911? That's the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And there they were when they got married years ago. I mean, this was the husband who was around the longest for Lori. Okay, our guests are staying with us. Coming up next, Alex Cox killed Charles Vallow. I mean, he admitted to it. He's saying it's self-defense, but how many people did Alex Cox kill?
He basically comes at you with the bat. Yeah. You tell him to put it down. Yeah. He's threatened, like, what are you going to do about it? Yeah. And what'd you tell him?
I didn't say anything. He's coming at me, and I'm holding the gun. Okay. If you're going to attack someone with a gun, you got to be ready for the repercussions.
Matriarch of the Adelson family gets arrested.
Terrible. Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law, Dan Markell.
Prosecutors say a bitter child custody battle was the motive for the murder-for-hire plot.
Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
Now that the ship is really sinking fast, blood doesn't matter that much.
The Matriarch Mastermind murder trial. Live coverage begins next week, only on Court TV.
Police or paramedics?
Both. I'm in police and an ambulance.
What's the emergency there?
I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
That's the 911 call from Alex Cox admitting that he shot and killed Charles Vallow. It's right there on the 911 call, right from the beginning. There's no guess about who was responsible here. But what's so bizarre and different about this story in this case are all the people who died prematurely who are somehow connected to Alex's sister, Lori Daybell. Take a look. You've got all the way to the left, that's husband number 3, Joseph Ryan, who died at a relatively young age and apparently was home alone when that happened. You've got Charles Vallow, her 4th husband, shot and killed by her brother. Then you've got her children, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow, who were buried in Chad Daybell's backyard. That's her husband's backyard. Then you've got Tammy Daybell, who died just 17 days before Lori married her husband. And then you've got Alex Cox, who when Tammy Daybell, there's an announcement, her body's going to be exhumed, he dies by himself in the bathroom. All these people dying around Lori. But let's talk about Alex, because we know for sure that he killed Charles Vallow. But that brings me to my next question. All these dead bodies, Alex Cox. How many people did Alex Cox kill here? How many of these deaths were from his actual hands or actions? Still with us, Nate Eaton and Mike King. Nate, I want to take a listen to David Warwick here. This is Melanie Gibbs' husband. Friends of Lori Daybell spent time at their house the weekend. I believe that JJ went missing or was no longer heard from. Take a listen to what he had to testify to.
I just went to say goodbye to Lori and JJ. And Lori was in the kitchen and she was a little dramatic. She explained that he climbed up on the cabinets in the fridge and got on top of the upper cabinets. And she had a picture of Christ on the upper cabinet, and he said that he went up there and pushed that down. And I just said, well, we're leaving. I'd like to say goodbye to JJ. And she said, oh, he was out of control, and I had to have Alex come and get him.
Okay, ominous to me that Uncle Alex comes and gets JJ. Nobody ever sees him again. Nate, from all the investigation, all that you've heard, all that you've uncovered here, let's talk about the 2 children, JJ and Tylee. Does the evidence point towards Alex Cox being the one who physically takes their lives?
I would say yes, Vinny. And one of the main pieces of evidence is the fact that his cell phone pinged on Chad Daybell's property on the days that those children were last seen alive. It was separate days in September of 2019. And the one cell phone ping was near the tree, underneath the tree, the little pond there where JJ was found buried. And then the other cell phone ping was at the fire pit where Tylee was found. And you also have the traces that have come out of his movements from his apartment to Chad Daybell's property, and how there were very few other visits in that time frame of him going out to Chad Daybell's property. Will we ever know exactly how those two children died, especially Tylee, what happened to her and her remains? We know what was left there, and there wasn't much, and it was horrific. I don't think we'll ever know that. Maybe we will if somebody decides to tell the truth, mainly Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, but that's what happens. I gotta point out, though, one more thing, Vinny. Alex Cox's wife, who he'd only been married to for a short time when he died, she told police in an interview, at the very end of an interview, it was like an hour and a half, she starts to tell them that the day after they got married, Alex told her, "I want to give you a massage." And they went to Walmart and bought a big tarp and came back to their room, and he laid it out and then gave her a massage. This is according to Zulema Pastenis, his wife. And she said she fell into a deep sleep. Yeah, there's the video right there. She fell into a deep trance, almost as if, and then she couldn't get herself up. You know, when you're really, really tired, you can't move. And she said that's what it was like. And she heard Alex on the phone, upset, talking to someone, presumably Lori or Chad. And the rest of the night, Alex was distant with her. He was on his phone. He wouldn't engage. They wouldn't watch a movie, anything like that. I've always wondered, did he try to possibly kill her that night? And it didn't work. Wow. She seems to think that she could have been another person to add to those line of photos that you just showed.
Unreal. Mike King, I want you to take a listen here to FBI investigator Ricky Wright talking about more of Alex Cox's cell phone data. This related more to Tammy Daybell.
Between about approximately a 2.5-hour period, there were numerous data points generally around the Daybell residence. The first data point that we got at 9:21 is actually behind the main residence. And then at 9:22, we get another one that's actually on the northwest corner of the Daybell residence, near a gate there. And then we have a gap in time where we don't have any precise information, but until 10:39, when there's another data point, also a GPS data point that's behind the residence. And then at 10:57, there's another also behind the residence with a 5-meter radius, also GPS. As best I could determine, it seems like the device is leaving that area of the residence at approximately 11:45.
Mike King, is it possible that Alex Cox goes inside Chad Daybell's home and is the one responsible for taking Tammy's life?
Well, I think it's absolutely possible, Vinny, and I guess that's the real challenge in this case is trying to understand. But one thing we know, and Nate did such a great job of bringing this out, is that we know that his phone pinged exactly where JJ was found. We know his phone pinged exactly where Tylee was found. Then we also know that his phone pinged behind the house and at the house at the time of Tammy's death, which really makes you say, hey, wait a minute, this is a lot of coincidence. But most importantly to me, because you hear me defending cell phone analytics all the time and saying how questionable it can be in some of these rural areas, it tells us that at that location, they were able to get really good cell phone location, either the GPS device off of the actual phone itself or through triangulation. And it makes me wonder if maybe he didn't have access to their Wi-Fi port or something at the house that helped tie that in and bring it a little tighter. To answer your question, Vinny, with a big, long explanation is absolutely, I think, is possible, if not probable.
Nate, how about Joseph Ryan and his death? We know Alex at one point assaulted him with a stun gun. We know there was a custody battle going on. What is the bottom line with the death of Joseph Ryan?
Well, he died, and the original cause was a heart issue. He had heart issues, and he was quickly cremated. And this happened back in 2018, before this story, really hit. Did Alex have something to do with that? We may never know. That's another unanswered question with this. I know that when Charles Vallow was killed and then all of these things started to happen, that all eyes turned to Joseph Ryan. I believe that Lori did end up with a life insurance money around $60,000 from his death. Was there a motive there? You could argue that she didn't know Chad Daybell at the time, so maybe there wasn't, but that's a great question, Vinnie.
Absolutely. And how about the death of Alex Cox, Mike King? We have about 25 seconds here or so. His death, coincidental, but ruled, again, natural causes.
In that conversation that Zulema had with police, she also indicated that he indicated to her, I wonder if I'm going to be the fall guy, Vinny. And that tells me that he was worried about what was going on. And you go back to Joe Ryan, he was laying in wait there for Joe Ryan when he was on a scheduled custody visit. There are too many things that point that all of these people were coming together in space and time, and it had to have been for a reason.
All right, thanks so much for all the issue. Nate, Hayton, and Mike King, appreciate it. All right, folks, I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of Lori Daybell, the Doomsday cult killer. This case is beyond tragic, and while there's already been 2 trials and 2 verdicts, there are still many important unanswered questions and a looming 3rd trial. Here's the story.
It's a story of religion, betrayal, sex, and murder. A story with multiple layers of deceit and the deaths of 5 people, all connected to one woman, Lori Daybell. But it all began when Kay and Larry Woodcock were concerned about the well-being of their little grandson, JJ, who disappeared, and his sister, Tylee, who also disappeared. They were found dead and buried in Lori's 5th husband's backyard. Lori and that husband, Chad Daybell, are both in prison for the murders of her children and his wife. And now, Lori is facing another murder charge, this time in Arizona, for the shooting death of her prior husband, Charles Vallow.
So what happened to Charles Vallow? We know he was shot and killed by his brother-in-law, Alex Cox, Lori's brother. That's where it happened. I want you to take a look at this video because eventually police were called, 911. They responded. They had body cameras at the scene. Take a look.
Chandler Police Department, anybody inside, make yourself known. 18, we got 1 subject down, apparent gunshot wounds to the chest. Did you get the guy inside's name?
No, I haven't got it. Charles Vallow. Charles Vallow? Spell that. V-A-L-L-O. Charles is the husband of the occupants here. But I guess he lives where? Houston.
Their last name.
Vallow, V-A-L-L-O. First name Charles, and that's all we got because he's from Texas. Okay. So we don't really know much else about him. I don't know if there's a wallet or something in here.
He's shot the
Yeah.
Is this guy listening? Yes, he's the brother of the wife. He was staying with his sister. Okay. It was I guess it was a domestic this morning, and they left. And it was just him and the brother-in-law, and the brother-in-law hit him in the head with a bat. To the bedroom, he grabbed his gun to put the bat down. The guy didn't, so he shot him in the chest. Okay. All right. So he lives in Santan Valley, just over here visiting. Vacation.
like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors took them last night.
Gotcha.
Like, hi, neighbor, sorry.
The story of Lori Daybell and Chad Daybell, so layered and so complicated, but we know they've been convicted of the murders of Chad's prior wife, Tammy, her children, Tylee and JJ. But here now we're talking about Charles, the shooting death of Charles. We know Alex Cox pulled the trigger, but my next question goes a little deeper than that. And it's not just about who pulled the trigger, but who was the mastermind of Charles' alleged murder? Because from the beginning, Alex Cox was saying self-defense in this case. I think this is an important question, and it gets into a lot of the relationship and dynamics of the folks involved here. So let me bring in my guests with me. The news director of EastIdahoNews.com and the man who tracked Chad and Lori down in Hawaii, Nate Eaton, and Lori Vallow Daybell's uncle, Rex Connor, also with us. Great to see you both. I want to play something before we attempt to answer this question. This is a phone call made by Chad Daybell calling the mortuary asking about cremation. This is kind of a bizarre call that got caught on and was recorded. So let's take a listen.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm assisting them with their calls. How can I help you today?
We just had a death in the family, and we really don't want anything but a cremation and then to send the cremains to a family in Louisiana. Just a simple, nothing other than a cremation and sending him to his family for a service in Louisiana. So is there any way to know a ballpark price on that?
Yes, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Okay, let me transfer you over to the director who can assist you with the pricing. What is your name, please?
It is Chad Daybell.
How do you spell the last name, please?
D-A-B-A-L, Daybell.
How are you related to the person who passed?
I'm his nephew.
And then also, this is for the Valley of the Suns in Chandler, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, he lives there in Chandler. I live in Iowa, so I'm just trying to help out.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yes, what is your uncle's name for reference, please?
He is John Daybell.
And last name?
Well, D-A-B-A-L.
Okay.
The same. John.
Does he have a middle name?
Myron.
Bizarre call. But so it seems like he's inserting himself in all of this. He's not there in Arizona when this happens, obviously. So what are your thoughts, Rex, about who the mastermind was here behind the shooting death of Charles?
Vinnie, I'm a little cynical about that question. I like to say there is no mastermind involved here. These are idiot criminals. They are not only evil, but they are ignorant. They're stupid. Sorry, I had to vent that. I think my personal opinion of Charles' death is Lori was the driver of that, but obviously she conspired with Chad, with Alex, and who knows who else. The original indictment says all co-conspirators known and unknown. I hope the upcoming trials give us more information about anyone else that may have been involved with that.
Now, there are also text messages between Chad and Lori about Charles's death benefits. Let's take a listen to that and then see how that impacts what we think here.
Lori sent Chad a message. I just got the letter from the insurance company saying that I am not the beneficiary. It's a spear through my heart. Who do you think he changed it to? Brandon or probably Kay? He left nothing for JJ. Chad responded to Lori, wow, that's terrible. There's no way to find out. Lori sent Chad a message to Chad. Nope, he can change it anytime he wants. He's the agent, and anyone can change their beneficiary anytime with their own signature. I'm thinking it must be Kay. Chad sent a message to Lori. It will be interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest.
Okay, Nate, it seems clear to me the motivation here is money, 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 money. Didn't get the money like they did from Tammy's death, but what are your thoughts here about the shooting death of Charles and who is kind of leading the charge in this plot?
Well, it's interesting to me that Lori would go to Chad for spiritual guidance, and it was Chad who told her that Charles had become possessed of this evil spirit named Ned Schneider, and that they would try to, quote unquote, pray the spirit out of him. And then when it didn't work, Chad continually was telling Lori what needed to happen next. Now, their good friend Melanie Gibb told me 4 years ago that the first time Chad told Lori that Charles was possessed, that Lori had kind of a problem with it. It didn't last long. She obviously got over it and was able to accept it, but she said that she was uncomfortable with what Chad was saying, the fact that her husband was possessed. Of course, money was the motive here. Sex was the motive so that they could be together. And when they found out that $1 million that Kay left behind was not for Lori, those text messages show that they were obviously very upset.
And how about Alex's role in all of this? Nate, how do you see that in terms of, you've got Chad and Lori having these conversations, but Alex is the one who's squeezing the trigger here?
Alex would do anything for his sister. That has come out time and time again. He was the avenging angel. He felt, and they kind of groomed him, I guess you could say, to know that whatever he was doing was sent from God. And that is what his purpose was. So he could have done all the dirty work here. And there's recordings of them giving him a blessing, saying that he will do whatever he needs to protect his sister and for Chad. He quit his job and moved to Idaho and bought dozens of guns, over 40 guns, took out loans, money so that their trips could be funded. So he was right there in the midst of the madness.
And Rex, this is your nephew and niece, Alex and Lori. What are your thoughts about their relationship, the nature of their relationship, and how it impacted what happened here to Charles?
Well, the nature of that relationship changed when Alex, I'll call it, converted to their bizarre religion that they were making up as they went. And it was a conversion at a certain time. It was certain podcasts he listened to. He told the story to Adam, who is my co-host on our podcast. And he converted. Once he converted, he was all in, 100%. Before that, he never had as close a relationship with Lori as, say, Adam did. Before all of this strange, bizarre religious rabbit hole came into play. And so, but once he was in, just like Nate said, he would do anything. He was in 100%. And it was a short time, that conversion was in a very definite time frame, where 1 week he was laughing at them talking about zombies, and the next week he was a complete believer.
Nate, the other part of this, if he doesn't get shot and kill Charles and Lori just goes through with a divorce, she ends up with a lot more money.
Right, but how much time is that, Vinny? She has to go through court. She has to, that takes time, whereas a gunshot, and let me remind you, it wasn't one gunshot. Investigators said once Charles was on the ground, he was shot again lying on the ground. They found a bullet in the wooden floor. So it wasn't just one gunshot, but that quickly does it. They thought the problems were solved there that day, at least it appears that way. It makes me wonder if Alex had not died that December day, and it seemed like he was starting to realize he may have been a pawn in this game, as he told his wife the day before, that I think that I might be their fall guy. What if he had not died? What would he have eventually been able to, tell the police everything? Would he have changed, his heart? It just makes you wonder where things would have ended up and how much he knew. He knew so much And then he died.
And he died.
We'll probably
The one
never
who
know.
knew everything died. I'm still so suspicious of that death as well. Guests are staying with us. Still to come. When did Lori become dangerous?
Yesterday was a threat to kill me.
Okay. What did she say yesterday?
She said, "You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers."
One of the most successful true crime TV shows ever.
This is crazy.
Now has a new home on America's original true crime obsession, 48 Hours, on Court TV. Coming up next on Court TV.
I did not want him dead.
A renowned snake breeder is shot and killed at his breeding facility.
If the devil was a person, I believe that was her.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. All new Sunday night, 8, 7 Central.
Only on Court TV.
Long story. She's had kind of a breakthrough reality. She thinks you're LDS?
Yes.
She thinks she's married to Moroni in the past. This is her
You think she's what?
was married to Moroni, top of the temple.
Charles Vallow knows there's something wrong with his wife, Lori. He knows that something has happened to her. Something has changed dramatically. There you heard him talking about a break from reality, that she's got some sort of a mental breakdown or problem going on here in what she's saying and the way she's acting. I want you to take a look at more of this body cam video because he's calling police from time to time because of things that are happening. But listen closely to his words here.
She's lost her mind. I don't know how else to say it. We're LDS. She thinks she's a resurrected being and a God, and remember the 144,000. She's come. Jesus is coming next year.
And two others.
Threatened me, murder me, kill me.
She threatened to murder you?
Yes. And she said,
How did she do that?
My bishop right there is in the car. He was on the phone with me today when she said, "I will have you destroyed." That's what she said there.
Okay, that's not a threat to kill you.
Yesterday was a threat to kill me.
Okay. What did she say yesterday?
She said, "You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers."
Wow. Charles, I think, knows this is getting pretty serious. So here's my next question, and it's about his wife, Lori, the focus of all of this. When did Lori become dangerous? Dangerous to people around her. Charles, her children. When did she become dangerous? Still with us, Nate Eaton and Lori's uncle, Rex Connor. All right, Rex, I'll start with you from your perspective. When was it that Lori became dangerous?
My opinion is she became dangerous when when Joseph Ryan took his last breath. And we've heard some people think that she was even there at that time. I don't know that. But the point being, and Lori's other brother, Adam, says this very well, whether they were instrumental in having Joseph murdered or whether Joseph died of natural causes, either way, that emboldened Lori to think God is with me. God answered my prayers. Joseph's gone. I wanted him gone. He's gone. Oh, look at the money I get for this, both in Social Security and life insurance. I believe that's the point at which she became dangerous, because now she has, a taste of blood, frankly, and a taste of the money and the profit. That is before she met Chad. Now, meeting Chad, again, to Adam, has a good, I wish he were here with us tonight telling us this. He has a good description. When they got together, it was just the perfect storm of evil. And so that compounded it. But my belief is it started when Joseph Ryan died.
Nate, I've spoken, and I know you've spoken to them many, many times, and Kay, JJ's grandma, and Larry, they talk about how they were so happy that Lori and Charles were going to be raising JJ, that they took her in, and they were they felt that Lori was going to be an incredible mother and was an incredible mother for some period of time. So from your perspective, studying this case, uncovering everything, from your perspective, when do you think Lori became dangerous?
She and Charles moved to Hawaii before all of this and lived there with JJ and Tylee. And I spoke with the nanny that lived over there with them. And the nanny told me that Lori got a hold of a religious book that was about the end times, the second coming. And she became obsessed with it. She couldn't put it down. It became her Bible. She would tell everybody about this book. In fact, when she and Chad were served with papers in Hawaii, she had that book with her by the pool. And I think that may have been the beginning of the shift where it became normal thinking, good mom, going to care for my kids, to obsessed with the end of times. What do I need to do to prepare myself for the second coming? And I think gradually from there, it just, moved a tick by a tick by a tick. And then when she met Chad at that religious conference in 2018, the fall, as Rex said right a minute ago, it was like a match and gasoline. And that, minute by minute change became a massive change to everything 100 miles an hour, go, 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 get everything out of our way until we can be together.
Rex, how about in real time for the family? Was there a point for the family where, Lori's not well, but so much to the point that, hey, things could get dangerous here?
I can't speak for everyone in the family. I don't try to. We're divided on a lot of subjects in there and have different opinions. But in this case, I think for me and others that I know of, when Charles sent out the emails to several of us members of the family talking about what Lori's into, and the attachment showed, and they came out in court and are public, but the attachment showed Chad's light and dark scale. That's the first indication, many of us, including me, that's the first indication we had that she's doing weird stuff. And I was familiar with that weird stuff a little bit from previous situations with other people. And that's when I started saying, this is a bad road to be on. I don't believe any family members at the time, although again, I can't see in people's minds or heart, but I don't believe any of us felt like murder was an option or people were about to start dying or, that they were dangerous to the children or the people around them. But that's the time where most of us found out, oh, she's going to a place that she shouldn't be going.
I want to thank both of you. You have incredible insight into all of this and have really helped us understand this. Nate Eaton, EastIdahoNews.com. Rex Connor, Silver Linings is the podcast you do with Lori's brother Adam. Thank you both so much. We really appreciate it. JJ and Tylee were just children who trusted and relied upon their mother, but that trust was broken. Lori put her own life and her own needs above her children. So the real tragedy is that if Lori just wanted to be alone with her prophet, her lover, Chad, all she had to do was pick up the phone, and JJ's grandparents would have welcomed them both with open arms and a whole lot of love. I think Charles would have as well. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.